Heavy week of content, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to BeerNet Radio. We got all of our beer editors together for our Wednesday warehouse. We're going to drop our quick one on a Friday. Jen has been in Vegas covering GNS, and Jordan's been out there covering Tilray, and Bianca's been out there covering Hemp. So let's get to it all. And then we've got the Reyes thing that just literally broke 10 minutes ago. So Jordan, why don't we start with you and the Tilray thing with BrewDog, and I'll just start by saying that BrewDog's original investors, the Punk, they don't seem to be real happy with the deal. We've lost our Punk roots,
Yeah,
but
sadly, Harry, because I know you were fond of those forward-looking thinkers. I'm talking about BrewDog's equity punks, but with this deal, there will be no return to any equity holders. So, as you summed up years ago, equity for punks?
Yeah.
Indeed. So,
and indeed they ended up being punks. And I have to say, I did warn them at the time, even in these pages, BrewDog was not happy about it. I was like, this, by the way, is not legal in the United States. I don't care what anybody says. But, whatever. It's mostly in Europe. And, but like some of them said, they're like, yeah, I lost $20,000, but hey, I got a discount on beer for 5 years.
Yeah.
Pays for itself.
Pays for
sad.
itself.
But, in hindsight, we probably should have seen this coming.
Yeah.
We knew BrewDog was up for sale earlier this year, and there was the kind of companies that you would expect kind of in the mix, reportedly, like CNC Cider Group, Royal Unibrew, and even BrewDog co-founder James Watt. But we should have known Tilray would be ready to pounce.
Tilray, always keeping their powder wet.
Yeah. And indeed, Tilray emerged victorious. They got the global platform and the IP and its flagship brewery in Ellen, Scotland, and about a dozen brew pubs in the UK and Ireland for about $44 million. So they got that. They're trying to finish out a deal to get assets in the U.S. and Australia as well.
Which would be less, right? They're not as developed here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Irwin called the U.S. business in total about a $20 million business.
Yeah.
So,
But they have still a bunch of brew pubs here, though, right? Even though they've closed a bunch, they still have
they've got like four main ones, Vegas, Atlanta, and then the couple in Ohio, which is where their production facility is, which also is, has a lot of excess capacity. And speaking on, what they actually bought, the European part of the business, Irwin said, the immediate job is filling up that flagship brewery in Ellen. It has a capacity of about 2 million barrels, and they're only producing 700,000 right now. And so the plan, it seems like in large part, is to use that brewery as a European launch pad for their U.S. craft brands. He called out Shock Top, Montauk, Sweetwater, and Tin Barrel. And something I found interesting on the call, too, is Irwin kind of made an out-of-the-blue reference to seltzer when talking about filling up Ellen, saying, we're looking at multiple areas in the seltzer area that ultimately we're looking at. So,
choice of words, ultimately.
Yeah, so they're looking at seltzer, check. But I took that to mean as they're looking at seltzer here stateside and something that they can also bring over to introduce in Europe. So if there's a beleaguered seltzer brand out there, just keep your eye on Tilray.
Do they sell seltzer in Europe?
No, that's why I took it to mean stateside, because seltzer really hasn't caught on.
No, they drink cider.
Yeah.
Cider. And
then as for the BrewDog brand itself, Irwin, as he often has said with their craft purchases, it's a brand that needs some love. He said he submitted that they got off track with about 60 brew pubs, and Tilray clearly sees a different path. They're going to end up with about a dozen and close the rest or sell them off. And unsurprisingly, Irwin said there's a lot of cost to take out of the business. Um, can I submit an analogy on Tilray? Y'all, y'all know bulky item pickup?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, where the
You
city
mean that
comes.
That's what they are?
the city
Yeah.
comes the city comes once a month and picks up all the shit you
Yeah.
put in your yard.
Yeah, they'll do it
They're
a
bulk
couple times a
bulk
year.
item removal.
Yeah.
Yeah, where the city will come and haul off all your stuff, whether it be fridges, dishwashers, couches, pool tables, whatever. The thing about that is the city doesn't actually pick up a lot of that stuff because before it goes out to collect, there's people that come by and pick
Right.
through people's piles and scoop up things that they find attractive.
One man's
Ne-
garbage is another man's gold.
And every
Yeah.
now and then
Or
you
homeless
see a
people.
truck going down on bulky item pickup with the like suspension screaming due to all the stuff they have piled in the bed with like things falling out as they hit bumps and they still stop and add more. And as they drive away, you think like, what in the world are they going to do with all that? And
Facebook
that
Marketplace.
reminds me of Tilray. Like
Right. They just
they
pick it
have
up.
they have collected all this stuff and they're like, ooh, I can fix that. Oh, this just needs a little love and scoop it up. And maybe they can turn them around, repurpose them, strip them down to make them essential. But right now, it just looks like one of those trucks with stuff piled to the brim. And you're like, oh,
We got a
scratching your head.
response. Yeah. No, we got a response that I think totally sums it up. And I was kind of thinking the same thing. And I don't mean for people to take this the wrong way, but they said, Irwin is either really smart or really dumb. And
I think
that's kind of
think he's-
the idea
well,
here.
I
Here's
think
the
he
deal
said
is
that about
it-
himself.
I mean, the whole thing is what the price is. In other words, if he's paying such bottom prices for these assets, they don't really have to grow. He just can put them all together and strip the costs out, and his stock will go up. His stock has gone down a little bit since all this has happened. It's
Yeah.
trading at $7. In December it was trading at 11, and in October it was trading at $21. That was its high.
Yeah,
Now I guess they must have done a split because
they did.
Yeah,
They did a
okay.
reverse stock. But 44 million for
Yeah.
that platform in Europe, a 2 million barrel capacity brewery. I mean, he
That's
made
cheap.
several comments on the call like you cannot
Beat
get
that with
this
a
for what we
stick.
paid.
no,
Yeah.
I bet the real estate's worth more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how he can do these things. In other words, he's financially smart. I don't know if he's a huge brand builder. I mean,
Right.
he did it with Celestial Seasonings or whatever. So
Celestial.
I don't,
Celestial.
Yeah.
Celestial. Yeah, I don't count the guy out. GNS, great coverage. Jen on the floor.
Yeah, Bianca was there too. We kind of
Oh, okay.
divided and conquered. But it was only a 2-day conference, really, but it was very, very meaty. So bear
It
with me
seemed-
for a second. Yeah.
It seemed jam packed. It really did.
It was very jam packed. So obviously Newlands came out and gave his final address as CEO. There were retailer and distributor panels. There was Malika, Sabia, brand marketing, all of it. So outgoing CEO Bill Newlands opened the show with a sort of victory lap. He talked about their beer volumes going from about 280 million cases to over 400 million on his watch. And of course, Modelo is now the number one brand by dollars in beer. And he said that Nick Fink, who he's known for 20 years, is the right guy to take the baton. Now, Nick was not there because he is still CEO of Fortune Brands. So we'll know what his plans are next month. It's interesting because, probably he can't rock the boat too much because obviously there's a board of directors, but CEOs obviously have a huge influence. And I would submit that people are doing the right things at that company. It's a hard backdrop and they're still growing share in 49 out of 50 states. So hopefully he doesn't come in and decide to be the smartest guy in the room and change a whole bunch of stuff up. But let me give you some of the other highlights. The big, hairy, audacious number was Pacifico's goal of 75 million cases by 2030. Today, it's just shy of 30 million, but the team said that Modelo was about the same size in 2010 as Pacifico is now. Pacifico is currently growing faster than Modelo was. We can't say anything about some of the big new brand work. I will say there was new Pacifico ad work, and the applause was a little bit tepid. So we'll see how that evolves.
I don't know if that's a great gauge of the quality of the marketing, but
we'll see what the end game. I think they're trying to evolve the branding a little bit, and I'm not sure it's
Pacifico will
there.
have no problem hitting that goal, by the way.
Oh, no, of course not. But just talking about the branding right now. Now, the Corona branding, the year 2 of La Playa awaits, which we also can't get into specifics though right now. I thought that was really solid work, very sensorially oriented, and that got really robust applause. But anyway, talking about marketing through lines, we've been hearing this a lot from different companies lately, but this was kind of the theme at GNS. Digital is king, local is queen, and live sports is the last great bastion on the big screen. Over half of total Constellation beer media spend now is in digital, and it's more like 90% for Pacifico. Local spend is about 5 times higher than it was 5 years ago. That's also obviously a huge trend for beer suppliers. Live sports investment, Modelo is making its biggest ever investment around the World Cup because they're not an official sponsor. Right. And speaking of the World Cup, as an aside, again, they had that distributor panel. We wrote about that. Won't go into too much detail there. But one of the guys, I think it was John Johnson, said that the World Cup could provide maybe 1% category lift this year, which was interesting because I've heard a lot higher and a lot lower. But anyway,
I think 1%. I think 1% is
reasonable.
Reasonable. I think it's a little conservative, but I don't know. But
that's how I feel.
think that's good. 1% would be great, honestly.
Anything would be great.
Yeah, anything would be great. Anything. But I'm most interested in what Chris Stefanski said. What was he seemed like he got everybody riled up.
He did.
He kissed their butt just a little bit. He was like, everybody's kind of boo-hooing about where we are in the industry, and he's like, look, 25 sucked, but you guys need to continue to lead from the front because we owe you a debt of gratitude for doing what you've done. And he did get sort of a standing ovation, right? So another thing
he hated.
Yeah. Well, and we're having him on next month too. So stay tuned more from Chris. Yes. We love Chris, and Chris loves the spotlight. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But he's good at it. So real fast, a couple more things. I mean, there's no big new innovation. Also, basically a trend. We know all the innovation that's coming out. We've written about it. They have that high ABV Modelo Chelada Suprema. So that should be big because it's large format, high ABV. That's super hot. That Good Peels Apple Refresher. We saw a little bit more about that brand. It's a sharp package, right? It's really bright. And it has an optimistic sort of angle that we hadn't known about before. So that's interesting. Sabia talked about Barrilito and of course the Corona Premier and Oro repositioning and saying that that's really gained traction lately. We tried their Austin Cocktail Spirits RTD at the reception, and that was actually really good. I'm surprised they haven't put more emphasis on that. I bet you they will this year. But that's kind of the 30,000-foot view of some of our takes and through lines. And B, I know you were there too, so I don't know what stood out to you.
Chris did come up throughout every session. Everyone was kind of mentioning his comments. Although I wasn't there, I got in a little bit later, so Jen saw him. But he seemed to have made a impact on everyone at the show because his name kept coming up on stage and references back to his kind of rallying cry for all the wholesalers in the room.
Was the new CEO there, Nick?
No, he wasn't. No,
okay.
He wasn't there because he's still CEO of Fortune Brands. So that was it makes sense, but also it's kind of
yeah, take the week off.
Yeah.
And from my point of view, if you're gonna bring in an outside CEO, at least he's in the beverage alcohol industry, so he knows what the rules are. He knows what he can and can't do in this industry. Because I've said this over and over. You bring in somebody from Pepsi, they think they can do what Pepsi does. So at least they've got that. And I know that, I've talked to some people like a little bit where like, he's not a beer guy, but neither was Newlands. Let's face it. I mean, Newlands was a wine guy, and Constellation was a wine company, and they seem to have transformed into a true beer-led company.
Yeah, and Nick was on the board too.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so he knows the company well. Yeah,
and they still got Sabia. So
right.
That's another thing. Real fast before I forget, one of the things I've heard over and over is like, why not Sabia? Why not Malika? And I don't think they want that job, right? That's a tough job.
They're marketing first people.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different skill set than financial engineering and having to go in front of investor relations. And, it's, it's kind of a shitty job, to be honest with you. But
I was surprised at the Victoria growth too. I mean, we see it, but how big that brand has gotten and the trajectory it's on. And I think it's important that they still have Sabia, because it seems like the balancing act is really going to come into play right now, because these days they really are kind of only competing against themselves. I mean, Dos Equis is trying to get back, but other than Dos Equis, there's really no significant Mexican import, and so
which is just crazy.
They're just kind of like, okay, well, we can push Pacifico, but that might take some of this, and then we have Victoria, and so Sabia's expertise is, I think, what will continue to keep them in this slow, somewhat measured build of all these brands and having them grow all at the same time.
Yeah.
If Constellation's good at one thing, they're very good at keeping price gaps in line. In other words, in putting their portfolio across the entire price spectrum, which, Barrilitos, I guess they're not expanding markets for that yet.
Well, he said 5 or 6 months before they talk about that, right? So
okay, they're in every price point now, just about. And, it looks like Oro's doing better now that it's repositioned, and Corona Premier. I would imagine their gross margins are probably going to come down, but that's the reality, I think, of everybody these days. I mean, so listen, if everybody gets obsessed about gross margins. It's really just most overall gross profit is what you want to grow. Who cares about gross margins? It's the profit that you're getting. And if you could sell more beer and get more money in, then it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, and Jen, as you pointed out in this very helpful rundown, we were the only beer trade publication to cover the Canabev conference in Miami. And Bianca, I believe you were there, and great reporting from there. Can you go over some of the key takeaways that you got from that conference?
So it is the Canabev Summit, which has been around a few years. It's a little, they keep things tight. I think they only have around 150 people. So it sounds like, I don't know that it's invitation only, but definitely it's people who know what they're doing. We're there, not people kind of new to the cannabis beverage world. So it was a good turnout of wholesalers, brands, and also retailers, which we always love when we can get any retail perspective on things. And basically it was the most candid conversation I've heard about cannabis beverage industry since I've been covering it for a couple of years. And that comes down to the fact that the Skittles with the Z was the example. That was the through line of the conference. That was the example used. Skittles with the Z was kind of the big bad hemp edible in the room that no one in the cannabis beverage industry wants to be associated with. And so, covering the industry, I've been wondering when there's going to be a big split and some divergence from other edibles outside of beverage. And that time is now with the pending hemp ban in November, and the Farm Bill markup was this week, and I don't think anything's moved on that necessarily, but it's real touch and go. And we don't really cover farming that much, but I think the hemp farmers in particular, they have to make decisions like now on what they're going to grow. And there's a lot of balls in the air on this. And so cannabis beverage has to do everything in its power to not be associated with bad actors. And at the same time, they're pretty bullish on aligning with 3-tier. And so there's some who I don't think are as on board with that, but I think it was a little bit sobering for the people in the room where they're using alcohol as an example post prohibition. How did alcohol get legitimized? And they didn't get everything at once. It had to start with 3-2 beer. So it's going to have to start with low dose hemp. Edibles are probably not going to be included. Harry, much to your disappointment, I don't think Willie's 750 milliliter bottles are going to be included.
Not going to make it.
Well, I'm going to stock up anyway. I just got a bottle in the mail yesterday. June Shine, those good guys over there, they keep me in good supply. And it came at the perfect time. I just polished off my last bottle. It goes really well with hydrocodone, by the way.
Oh my God.
So, I think there's some recognition. We can't get everything we want, at least not right now. But I think they're still really bullish on the category and kind of where it can grow. And, there's been a lot of numbers thrown out. I think 30 billion or, different numbers on kind of positioning what the category can be. I think they do think it'll be bigger than craft beer, which was interesting to see it positioned that way.
Maybe in dollars at some point, but and we've been kind of saying this point on this podcast for like 2 years that first of all, they need to jettison the candy and they need to embrace a 3-tier system, and giving them a history lesson of what happened after a prohibition is a wise thing. The prohibition is still playing out. I mean, half of Dallas was dry 10 years ago, and most counties in Mississippi were dry, and you couldn't order liquor by the drink there was no on premise in Mississippi until like the 70s. I mean, so it took a long time to get where we are. And the main thing about, I know some are like, well, shit, I don't want to give up that margin. Why do we have to go through a wholesaler? Well, the wholesaler's the choke point where the taxes are collected. You have to have, the state can't afford to have 1,000 people paying taxes. They need the wholesalers, just the very few wholesalers to do it. Anyway, that's it. Those arguments, they play well in Washington. They play well at the state level. And I think their only chance that those guys are going to have is if they play it like, we're just going to do it just like the 3-tier system with beer. And that way it gets the wholesalers on board, which are very important politically.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents.
I think that's the direction they're rowing in. So we'll see.
Well, time is TikTok, right?
I know. That plane is a crash, and they need to pull up.
I did ask. They had their kind of trade groups there, Coalition for Adult Beverage Alternatives and Hemp Beverage Alliance. So I asked Chris, who's the CEO at Hemp Beverage Alliance, at what point do we kind of know what's going to happen or what's, this year? Because it's in November, but it's not going to be in November that we kind of know where it's headed. And he kind of said, around July, because, I think the Congress goes on their recess and for the month of August. So he's like, I think we're hoping we kind of have an idea in July, and if not, definitely like September, right when they're back. So
that's cutting it close though, right? Because of all the things that you have to do, like retailers have to plan, and of course the farmers, as you mentioned, and that sort of thing. So God, that's cutting it close. But hey, better something than nothing. These people have a high appetite for risk or a high tolerance for risk.
I think the low bar goal I think, is just to have Congress kick the can down the road another year.
Yeah.
Just say, hey, we're just going to extend it, and that would probably be an easy vote. They could probably get, Rand Paul or somebody could get that through the Senate.
Yeah, they definitely don't expect any legislation this year. I think it's kind of a two-pronged approach where, they need an extension, but even with that, they recognize there's probably going to be concessions. It's not going to be,
right.
Maintaining the status quo. It's going to be, it could be dosage, it could be, form factor, it could be, the size of the bottle. All that is definitely up for being included in that. If it's extended, and then at the same time, they need to kind of have some legislation in the books. And so I think right now they're looking at, there was a bill introduced by Morgan Griffith a couple months ago, and they're, admittedly, they're like, it's not perfect, but that's probably going to be what we coalesce around and try to get to a point where we can, legitimize the industry and have a federal framework that works.
Right. Okay. Well, good stuff. I mean, and so then, just before we got on this podcast, we had a little bit of advance notice this was coming, and it's not a huge surprise, but Reyes has picked up more of RNDC, kind of just like picking at the turkey carcass at Thanksgiving. These are the leftovers. I don't know what the future end game is for RNDC, but that's for another podcast. But what are those details, Jen, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, so we first reported in January that Reyes was in talks with RNDC for, I think it was 7 markets back then. And now we know that the tally is up to 11, and the list has changed a little bit. Illinois is no longer part of the consideration. And there are 4 net new states for Reyes in this deal: Colorado, Arizona, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. So that would bring Reyes, if this agreement comes to fruition, which would close in May pending, government approvals, that would bring Reyes to about 15 states and Washington, D.C. of total coverage. The entire list includes Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Hawaii, Louisiana, Maryland, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Texas, Virginia, and of course, D.C. It's interesting, that they're getting a stronger foothold potentially in Texas, huge market. And of course, as we all know, RNDC is a big wine and spirits wholesaler. So this is Reyes getting that much bigger into spirits. Some people have told me, like, suppliers are pushing for this. They want their large wholesalers to be deeper into spirits, which was interesting to me. And I've also heard other sort of whispers that Reyes could be looking at other things as well. But as I think we've talked about, and which was one of the themes of our summit, I think these days it is eat or get swallowed, right? Get bigger, or you're the one who's going to get acquired. So
what does Purser always say?
He says a lot.
Yeah,
he says
a lot.
Something like, don't come for lunch, or don't be lunch.
Oh,
I don't know. He always has those.
Don't be lunch. Yeah, I like eat or get swallowed. So
let's just use that one. It's interesting to me that Reyes has no compunction about entering a state with RNDC that they have no other infrastructure in, like Louisiana, for instance. Like, they don't have a presence there at all. So they're just kind of taking over what Reyes had, and what value is that? And the value, I guess, is that the current suppliers won't leave if they think it's a financially secure company that Reyes is.
Yeah, I mean, there is no franchise protection, but we're kind of getting to the point where else could they go after
I mean, they could go to Southern, but there's the risk of being arrested. Being thrown in jail.
Too soon.
Sorry guys. Hey, everybody does dirty tricks in some markets, so just some people get caught. All right. Well, anything else that we're missing? Wanted to keep it kind of short. So,
I mean, obviously there was the Southern Glazers scandal that continues to play out in the pages of the San Francisco Chronicle. And then rumors that Four Loko's up for sale, which I believe, right? Once the Beatbox deal went, now you've got Four Loko like, yeah, us too. And I bet you Happy Dad is the next one to sell. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
For Four Loko, I don't know who can buy that and maintain that same type of brand. Like who if somebody takes it over, they're going to sanitize that brand to where it doesn't have like unless Liquid Death or somebody, purchases that brand. I don't see how anyone can kind of continue that character of Four Loko.
It certainly rules out AB, Heineken, Molson Coors, Constellation. It rules out the big publicly traded because just the name Four Loko has baggage. I mean, it's cool to young people.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that. I mean, I kind of thought that maybe Beatbox would have the same problem, but yet AB has. AB would not have touched this 10 years ago. They were so sensitive about that, the underage and all of that. But Four Loko, it could be private equity. It could be Simon. It could be Irwin Simon.
That's what I was thinking. Like, was Irwin like, I think when he saw this Reuters article?
400 million seems pretty high. I don't know what their sales are, so maybe it's not.
That doesn't seem like a bargain.
Yeah.
And it does. It doesn't have the momentum like Buzzballs and Beatbox, going into this exploratory sell, but it is big in all the right places. Like it's like top 10 in flavored alc and number 7 in high AB flavor. So like that's where you want to play nowadays, and they've got quite the presence there, and also like as you explained, Harry, the baggage and notoriety. So
maybe one of the Japanese brewers.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that too. And honestly, I really don't think it's that baggage-y today. I don't think
it's been long enough, right?
Yeah. I really, especially in today's like populist sort of leaning everything, it's very Americana. It's very like, fuck you, we're America, right? Like, which is very popular right now. So the window might be kind of short, but I actually, I like you said, maybe an energy company, private equity. I think there's lots of people who would buy it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for another great Wednesday Warehouse. We'll see you back here next week. And we have also some guests lined up that Jen's been lining up. And
Ryan Lake is next week. Yeah.
Oh, he's always good. Ryan's always good. And also thank you guys for covering me for the weeks that I've been out. And by the next time you see me, I will be shaved and showered and looking better.
Can't wait.
Take care.